Welcome, everyone. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer. Today, we're taking a story that most of us have probably heard a million times since we were kids, the classic fable of the fox and the grapes. And we're going to look at it through a completely different lens. We aren't just breaking this down as some simple children's tale. No, we're looking at it as a fascinating, real-time breakdown of effort, absolute physical failure, and deeply ingrained human behavior. We are going to see exactly what happens when intense, burning desire meets an immovable physical obstacle. But before we even get to our hungry fox, I want you to think about this for a second. Have you ever tried incredibly hard for something, failed repeatedly despite your absolute best efforts, and then suddenly convinced yourself you never actually wanted it in the first place? I mean, we've all been there, right? It's such a universal experience. You apply for a job, you get rejected, and suddenly you're telling all your friends, oh, the commute would have been a nightmare anyway. Well, this explainer is all about the psychology behind that exact feeling, and we're going to see it perfectly illustrated through the agonizing physical struggles of our main character. Okay, let's dive right into this and set the initial stakes of our source material. Our story begins long, long ago with a fox, and the text tells us a really important detail right up front. This is a fox who absolutely loved to eat. One day, he's just rolling through the woods and he stumbles upon a beautiful grape orchard. Now, the text notes that he felt very hungry, and more importantly, it says grapes had never looked so good. Think about that framing for a moment. You know that feeling when you're just absolutely starving and even a plain stale cracker looks like a five-star meal? Well, this isn't just a casual little snack he's passing by. His hunger is peaking and the visual temptation is absolutely perfect. So the stakes for our protagonist are incredibly high right from the jump. But of course, every great narrative needs some conflict. On one side, we've got the ultimate motivation, his extreme hunger and his deep, deep love of eating. But on the other side, the obstacle. Those beautiful grapes are hanging from a high branch. Crucially, the text explicitly states they hung higher than the fox could reach. So this introduces an immediate, undeniable gap between his intense desire and his physical reality. He can't just stretch out a paw and grab them. He's going to have to exert some serious physical effort to close this gap. And that brings us to the central focus of our analysis today, the failed jumping attempts. This right here is where the story shifts from a passive desire into active, strenuous effort. The fox realizes the height and he initiates attempt 1. He doesn't just reach up on his tiptoes. The text tells us he jumped. But the simple, brutal reality of this first attempt hits him instantly. He did not get high enough. The initial physical exertion ends in immediate, undeniable failure. But hey, he's highly motivated, so he certainly doesn't stop here. Now, what's really interesting about this is his tactical adjustment. Treat this like we're watching a slow-motion sports replay. He doesn't just jump from a standstill again. No, he backs up. He takes a running start, and he launches himself. Look at the escalation in physical effort here. He is using kinetic energy. He's strategizing. He is pouring absolutely everything into the mechanics of this jump. But the result remains exactly the same. He falls short. But listen, this second jump is different, and it introduces a fascinating psychological element. Pay attention to the exact phrasing from the source text for this second attempt. It says he almost got high enough this time, but not quite. Oh, man. This is the agony of the near miss. It wasn't a total failure. It was a microscopic failure. And from a behavioral standpoint, a near miss is incredibly dangerous because it fuels desperation. It tricks the brain into thinking, if I just push a little bit harder, if I literally just jump one more time, I'll get it. That fractional physical gap is exactly what triggers the total emotional collapse we're about to witness. Notice how rapidly this whole situation deteriorates. We start with calculated jumps, the running starts, the strategic leaps. We move to the near miss. But then, he cries. The physical toll of the failed jumps has completely broken his emotional state. He is quite literally weeping from the exertion and the sheer frustration of it all. But because of that near miss, he can't stop. The text says he cried and tried again and again. This is no longer calculated strategy, folks. This is a frantic, agonizing cycle of repeated jumping. He is just throwing his body into the air over and over, exhausting himself entirely, until finally, complete physical and emotional exhaustion forces him to give up. He simply could not get high enough. Let's see how this builds, because the aftermath of all that frantic jumping is incredibly telling. Look at the abrupt shift in his physical behavior. He finally gives up, he walks away. But notice that absolutely crucial detail. He puts his nose in the air. I mean, think about the contrast.
Just moments ago, he was sweating, straining, running, jumping, and literally crying in desperation. And now he's just walking away with his nose in the air? This is the physical manifestation of forced apathy. He is adopting an arrogant posture to mask the profound humiliation of his physical failure. And that arrogant posture leads directly to one of the most famous rationalizations in all of literary history. As he walks away with his nose up in the air, he says to himself, "I am sure those grapes are sour." Wow. This is a total masterpiece of self-deception. He just spent a massive amount of physical energy violently jumping for those grapes. He cried over them. But to protect his deeply bruised ego, he retroactively changes the value of the goal. He convinces himself that the beautiful grapes he just destroyed himself trying to get are actually disgusting. He devalues the object to excuse his own physical inability to jump high enough to reach it. So the crucial point is understanding the psychological defense mechanism we just watched unfold in real time: scorn. Scorn is the act of rejecting or dismissing something as worthless, especially when it's unattainable. Now, the fox didn't scorn the grapes when he first saw them, right? He thought they looked better than ever. The scorn was only generated as a direct reaction to his failed jumping attempts. The physical failure literally necessitated the psychological scorn. It's a built-in defense mechanism used to resolve the painful sting of inadequacy. And that brings us to the explicit moral provided by the source text: it is easy to scorn what you cannot get. This classic behavioral takeaway is earned entirely through the agonizing sequence of the fox's physical struggle. The story shows us that it's physically difficult to jump, to try, to fail, and to scrape yourself off the ground and try again. That takes a massive toll. But what is easy? Well, it is incredibly easy to simply change your mind, dismiss your goal as worthless, and walk away with your nose in the air. The moral warns us against taking that easy, ego-protecting way out when we face our own physical or metaphorical high branches. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought to take with you today. When was the last time you scorned something just because you couldn't reach it? Think back to your own failed jumps. Those times you put in the real effort, took a running start, felt just a bit short, and then immediately told yourself the grapes were sour anyway. Recognizing this pattern in ourselves is the very first step toward actually overcoming it, rather than just walking away with our noses in the air. Thank you so much for joining me as we unpacked this incredible source material. Keep learning, keep analyzing, and most importantly, keep reaching.